is it only saying I have 19 minutes? Son of a bitch. These guys don't do pictures. Okay. If I don't knock over the camera, we can do this. Okay, so we're going to talk about things to do at a reptile show. And I have my sister-in-law Brandy with me for this video. So I'm actually going to just start with, you just went to your very first reptile show.
Yeah.
A venue I've never been to.
Yeah.
And you went without me.
Unfortunately.
I mean, you got me by phone, but
yes.
What was your, first impressions or things that scared you or worried you or tips for viewers?
Definitely knowing your research behind the vendors that are there is a big, big, big deal.
100%.
If I wouldn't have known what I was getting into by going to get Dahmer at kickballs, I would have been completely out of my whole arena with that one. But definitely knowing your vendors and your price range for different animals and feeders.
Yep.
Would be a big, big plus.
That's definitely one of the things on my list, so I guess we'll just start with that. Do some research before you go. Like he mentioned, check the list of who's going to be there, what kind of vendors. Do a little research. What do people that have bought from them say? Also, have an idea of what you want to buy before you go.
Yeah, that helps. Because you'll definitely buy more than what you want.
Yes. Do you think kind of having an idea what you want to help prevent you from impulse buying a little bit?
Oh, definitely, because I was looking at a bunch of blue toms, and then I found Dahmer. I was looking at bearded dragons, and I was like, no, I really only want to see what is going on with the skink field.
Yep.
So that definitely helped me knowing what I was looking for instead of just like, oh, I like this, oh, I want this.
Yep. I want this, I want that, this is cool. And when you kind of have an idea of what you want before you go, this means you can also check into what kind of morphs do you like. What is the average price range for the particular animals you're interested in checking out while you're there? Because if you're looking at prices online from just a couple of places, you're going to have an idea of what the price is for the animal. So if there is a good deal at the reptile show, you're going to know when you see it. You're going to be like, oh my god, this animal's like $200 at LLL Reptile, and here it's $130. You're going to know it's a good deal, you're going to know how to spot it, and you're definitely going to make the most bang for your buck while you're there. And knowing ahead of time, you're also going to know, you'll be able to look at what you own, what kind of equipment you have, and whether or not you are actually have on hand what you need to take care of this animal if you buy it while you're at the show, or know, hey, I have X for the animal, but I need Y and Z. Let me go buy it over at the supply standard back in the corner, or whatever. So that was definitely one of my top things on
That's
the
definitely
list.
what I did when after I bought Dahmer. I went and I had to get substrate, and I priced heating mats.
Yep. So that's definitely a good thing. And Dahmer here, for anybody who's wondering, is a Schneider skink. They also go by dotted skink sometimes. And I think I'm just going to use him to go into my next thing, which is things to actually ask about an animal that you are interested in. So Schneider skinks are one of those species that you may or may not know. She did, because she actually was researching before she went. They are almost exclusively offered as wild-caught animals. And wild-caught animals can have level of various imperfections. They might have some scars. In this case, Dahmer has a regrown tail. You can kind of see where his pattern just suddenly ends, because this part's completely regrown. He's got a couple of toes that are black from injuries that he had before she bought him that are going to die and fall off. However, if the species is pretty much always wild caught, as long as the animal looks healthy, it's alert, you do want to check for any signs of skin mites, because that's a common thing with wild caught animals, even captive bred animals, honestly, guys. It's a big thing. You always want to check the animals from the nose all the way to the tip of the tail, the top of the body, the sides, and the entire belly, for signs of mites, swollen areas, which look like old injuries that are possibly infected, scale rot, which is the scales look kind of shriveled and kind of like a rusty orange color. You want to make sure the animal is alert. You know, it's looking around, it's aware of your presence. There's no bubbles coming out of the nose, it's not wheezing, stuff like that. And it doesn't matter if they're wild caught or captive bred, you should always do a health check. So, but for, things that are healed up, like in Dahmer's case, he's got a regrown tail. The old injuries on the toes were completely healed up. They weren't, swollen or looked infected or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And his scar, the one scar he has, is completely healed over. Do not let minor things like that deter you from an otherwise healthy animal that you were interested in that is of a good price compared to whatever the average is for the species on the market.
Yeah, because before I seen Dahmer, I seen a fire skink, and its tail was fine. I asked them to take it out of the container and for them to actually hold it because I wanted to feel out, knowing it was going to be wild caught, I wanted to feel out what kind of attitude I would be dealing with because I'm more of a hands-on.
Me too.
So I want to love them, but the fire skink was out of control, and then I didn't see Dahmer initially, I seen the one behind him, and that one just wasn't as calm as I would have liked, but Dahmer definitely, when Dahmer was taken out of his container, he perked up, he kind of looked around, licked around, and then kind of just chilled. So I looked him over, and I was like, okay, this is the one I'm taking. I did see the different color in his tail, and I figured it was an injury, and his tail grew back. So I wasn't nervous about that. I did notice his fingers when I got home, but then you had checked him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's in real good shape. I mean, wouldn't have deterred me from getting him either, and you know me, I'm picky. And the reason why you always want to do those health checks is there is something called reptile dumping. And what happens is at these big shows, sometimes you'll get one or two breeders that come in, especially from out of state, and they will bring in animals that they know are sick or animals that are maybe not, quite optimal. They will sell them for really cheap prices. They usually will not have business cards or any kind of receipts or anything like that at their table that you can take with you. And they do that because they know by the time you get home to realize that this animal is sick, you have no way of contacting them. They made money off of a sick animal. So it's very important to do those head to tail health checks to protect yourself, just to make sure you're not getting one of those sellers. And before you handle an animal, so this brings us actually into our next thing, which is like etiquette at a show. Most breeders, if you are serious about an animal, they will let you hold the animal or they'll take it out for you so that you can do that nose to tail check. But you always want to ask before handling anybody's animals because they're not yours. And I carry a bottle of instant hand sanitizer with me. Some breeders will have it right at their table, but I use it after handling every single animal. And that is partially to protect myself from possible salmonella transfer, but also to protect the reptiles as I go from table to table, that I'm not spreading anything around. So do be mindful and do be respectful of everyone's collections, because there's stuff captive bred to wild caught, and people put a lot of effort into keeping animals healthy if they have healthy animals. So just do your part, sanitize, clean. If you handled an animal that you found mites on, go to the bathroom, scrub up. If you can't get to hand sanitizer, don't spread anything around.
Well, I know it was definitely a turnoff if I didn't see hand sanitizer at a table.
Yeah, but some do, some don't, so I just carry my own, which is also a plus if the very busy bathrooms happen to run out of soap at the reptile show. So hand sanitizer is good for more than one thing. Another thing to do when you're there, this goes with not transferring diseases between vendors' collections. Do not set your bags or animals that you bought somewhere else on top of another vendor stand, or on top of their display cases, because you could possibly transfer something from the animal you bought somewhere else to their collection, plus you're blocking the view of whatever's in their at their table for other people as you're walking by. Because I know, I'm sure you've probably seen this, had this happen to you. You might be just walking by an aisle, kind of doing one of these things, looking at tables over people's shoulders, and then you see something. Like, you don't stop to look there, but you see something as you're just kind of going past, and you're like, whoop, we're going over here. So if you're covering stuff up, people can't necessarily see it, and somebody might lose out on it. Also ask before you do any kind of filming or photography at a table.
A big thing.
Most people won't mind, but it's definitely courteous to ask. So, and don't ask to handle animals that you're not serious about buying. Don't just be like,
I just want to touch it.
Yeah, I want to
see it.
Yeah, I want to touch it. But if you're like seriously interested in possibly buying it, go ahead, ask to handle it. Or be like, hey, I'm interested in this species. I don't know if it's right for me. Ask questions, and most of the time the breeder will be like, here, handle one.
There was definitely a table there. They had a couple different pythons. They had a Chinese water dragon, a chameleon, and 3 different types of bearded dragons that were just sitting there. And as long as you used their hand sanitizer, they were okay with letting you hold them, pet them, to get your own feel for the different types of animals.
Yep, and some people have things out ready to go, so it all depends on the person. I actually ended up with my first python because I went up to the guy and I was like, I don't know if this is the right species for me, but I've done my research. I'm definitely interested in this species. I wasn't looking for a snake today, and I just started asking him questions about the species, and he's like, feel free to handle any of them you want. And right then and there, he basically had a sale, because once I was touching it and it was in my hand and I found one that was really good personality and seemed to like me, it was a done deal. I went home with the snake. So that's how I ended up with my Woma python. So people will definitely, but ask. Don't just assume. And remember, until you pay for it, it is their animal.
Yeah.
So be very careful about it being dropped or hit out of your hands or anything like that. So I think that actually, for the most part, covers everything on my list. Oh, no, one more thing. If you're going to buy an animal, there's a couple of questions that are very important to ask. You want to know if it's captive bred or wild caught. Because wild caught, as I said, tends to come with more health issues that may be hidden. You can ask a few questions about the care if you want. Don't ask them everything. But especially if it's a rarer species, something that's not very common, you might want to ask, hey, I've seen people do this way, or I've also seen it done this way. How did you do it for this in your case? So a good example is I bought a mossy frog. Some people set them up with a big tub of water and half land. Other people fill the tub with water and just have lily pads floating. Some people use moving water, some people don't. So when I got mine, I had asked the seller, how was the one I'm buying raised? So that I could mimic that exact setup, because there's plenty of variations on it. You want to know what kind of prey is it eating. Is it eating frozen, thawed, or live in the case of snakes? Because, I hate dealing with live. It's hard for me to get. It's expensive. So it can be a deal breaker for me. So you want to know. You also need to know what size, because obviously if it's not already in your freezer at home because you have another snake eating that size, you're going to need to go down the line to one of the frozen rodent breeders, and you're going to need to buy the size before you leave. Or, if you're picking up an animal, you breed roaches, but it's only been fed crickets so far, you're going to want to pick up crickets before you leave. So it's very important to ask what it's eating, what size, frozen, thawed, yada yada, and when was the last time it was fed, so you kind of have an idea of when to feed it next. Now, of course, you're going to want to let it settle in for at least a week, but you can start offering food as soon as 24 hours after you bring it home, again, depending on the feed schedule. If it's a snake and it just ate 2 days ago, you're going to wait 3 more days or so before trying to feed it.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, lizards, whole different ballgame. So let me first see if this thing is still recording. It is. All right, so we have 4 more minutes on this camera here. Did you have any final thoughts, Brandy? Or any final things to like kind of add to what I said?
I think definitely just making sure you do your research is a big thing. It's really huge, and I wouldn't go in there blind and walk out with something and not have something prepared at home to put it in. Like when I got Dahmer, I had 2 10-gallon tanks. So I had a tank. It's not a forever tank, but he had something to go in for now because he's obviously big enough for a 10-gallon tank. But definitely knowing what you want. It doesn't hurt looking around. You might find something that you're more interested in and would rather have, and knowing your vendors is a humongous thing.
Oh yeah, there's vendors that I avoid like the plague because I've seen some really sick, poor-looking animals that they should be ashamed to have put out before, and you know the reviews kind of back up a bunch of stuff. There's also, I tend to talk to vendors. If I'm really interested, I might ask 1 or 2 care questions that I know the answer to, or something like that.
Like fact checking.
Mm-hmm. Just to kind of get a vibe for the seller. Try to see if they are kind of seem like they're just trying to push a sale, like push you to get something that maybe is not really for you, or something that they don't even seem to know how to take care of properly, because that's a big red flag to me that maybe the animal's not that healthy, has some hidden problems, and I just don't want to support a seller like that. So I make a little bit of small talk where I'm seriously interested and kind of fact check them and kind of weed out some of the sellers that seem like they care more about the money than the
it's
animals.
Definitely a turn on when the vendor knows what they're talking about with the animal. It makes you feel more secure in your purchase, and you're not just like where Kickballs was very like, oh well, you want the fire skank, here, I'm going to take it up so you can pay for it. No, I didn't. I never said that. Come back.
Yeah,
that's not. I didn't feel secure dealing with them. But Dahmer sealed the deal himself for me. I would not go back to them. They did not have very good customer service skills.
Yes, and I purchased from them in the past as well, and I wouldn't do it again. They just happened to have a skink that had a good personality. He was healthy, and they had the best price in the shop at the time, and I was still pretty green to the whole shop thing, so I didn't know better yet. But I would not go back. I definitely like it when a breeder is very direct. They're not trying to push anything on you. I literally had, animal I know is always wild caught. Asked him, well, how long have you had this animal? Because that's usually important if it's wild caught. Like, how long have you had it? And he's like, honestly, I just came off the boat 3 days ago. That is honesty. That's a guy that's going to tell you how it is. You're going to be fully informed in your sale. And if you're okay with the facts laid out before you,
Make the sale.
You're good to go. Like, you don't have to be worrying that somebody's trying to trick you into buying something. A good seller is going to tell you straight up the facts, even if it may hurt his sales, because they know in the long run it's going to make you a returning customer. You're going to be happier with what you choose to buy, whether it's from their stand or not. Mm-hmm. And you're going to be prepared. Like, what you're getting yourself into if the animal hasn't been established at all. Like, to settle in for a bumpy road possibly.
Yeah.
In my case, that particular animal happened to unfortunately not make it. But it seemed healthy enough at the time. But I was informed. So I'm not mad at the seller. I've returned to the seller, and I've purchased things from him before with no incidents with other species. So, okay. I think that's probably about all the recording time we have on this puppy. And it is, so good night, YouTube.